Yes,
Congressman, let me ask you about this, because I think it's a very important threshold question outside of the very intense partisan atmosphere. You mentioned FISA twice for our audience, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. These are specialized warrants, secret surveillance. Is it your representation to the nation, sir, that everything that the FBI did in the process of obtaining that surveillance warrant on Carter Page absolutely followed proper protocol, every evidentiary standard was met, and there was nothing askew about that warrant ever?
Major, there's nothing askew about that warrant that I can see.
Welcome to Hannity. We begin tonight a Fox News alert. We begin with major breaking news. We were right yet again. Look at this. In a letter to the FISA court, the Department of Justice admitted that at least 2 of their applications against Trump campaign associate Carter Page lacked probable cause and that its surveillance of Page should not have continued. A stunning admission of guilt that FISA abuse occurred, illicit spying occurred, and the rights of not only an innocent American were trampled, but that means all the spying on a candidate, transition team, and president, yeah, that was happening too.
In the process of obtaining that surveillance warrant on Carter Page, absolutely followed proper protocol, every evidentiary standard was met, and there was nothing askew about that warrant ever.
Major, there's nothing askew about that warrant that I can see. And if the Republicans were really concerned about this, because everything that I have seen, the FBI acted completely appropriately, they would have invited the FBI before our committee, as I urged them to do.
Donald Trump, Trump TV, Devin Nunes conspiracy theory that supposedly proves the entire Russia investigation is a hoax. Tonight, that conspiracy theory is blown up in spectacular fashion.
This weekend, the Trump administration did something that's never, ever, 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 ever been done before. They released an application for a wiretap on Carter Page.
Mr. Trump initially tried to capitalize on the release of the Bureau's FISA application, saying it proved the FBI misled the court. But lawmakers from both parties have disagreed with the president's assessment. Here's what Republican Senator Marco Rubio told CNN.
So as far as you know, and you're a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the surveillance was justified.
Yeah, I don't think they did anything wrong. I think they went to the court. They got the judges to approve it. They laid out all the information, and there was a lot of reasons unrelated to the dossier for why they wanted to look at Carter Page. And Carter Page was not a key member of the Trump campaign, and the Trump campaign has said that.
Newly unclassified documents from the Foreign Intelligence Service Court indicate the Justice Department has concluded there was insufficient evidence to establish probable cause that former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power. That reasoning was used by the FBI in order to get 2 surveillance warrants. The FISA court's presiding judge cites what he calls material misstatements and omissions in the FBI request.
Was the memo improperly drafted and in bad form?
No, of course not. And the hypocrisy of this just kind of reaches out and grabs you by the throat. Here the Republicans write a memo which the FBI quite accurately describes as misleading and omitting material facts. The Department of Justice says it would be extraordinarily reckless to release this. And what does the president do? He says, I'm going to release it. Before I even read it, 100% I'm going to release it. This is a president who puts his own personal interest above the national security interests of the country. Now, they claimed when they released the Republican memo that this was in the interest of full transparency, and all the White House people were saying full transparency. Well, apparently full transparency only goes so far.
This news comes from a newly declassified order from the court that handles FISA applications. This means the final 2 FISA warrants, at least, to spy and deny the rights of a U.S. citizen, their civil liberties tied to the Trump campaign, for the spying that took place there. Spying, yes, the right word. Well, should never have happened.
I have total confidence that the FISA process was followed and that the entire case was handled in a thoughtful, responsible way by DOJ and the FBI. I think the notion that FISA was abused here is nonsense.
I think the notion that FISA was abused here is nonsense. What we know is that the last two FISA applications signed by Rod Rosenstein, Director Comey, and Andrew McCabe they've come out and said the DOJ as well as the FISA court, these were not legitimate. They should have never been done. But it doesn't excuse the first two applications. It says they are continuing to investigate the first two applications, and that would be going all the way back to September 2016 when they began to spy on Carter Page. And remember, Kevin Kleinsmith, the attorney for the FBI, basically omitted significant information that Carter Page was actually working and supplying information to the CIA. He omitted that from those applications. He also altered the application. So this is something that they're going to continue to look at, and we're going to hear a lot more about this in the upcoming weeks.
Well, President Trump wanted to use the release of these documents to sort of discredit the Mueller investigation. You know, that the FISA warrant was improperly received or improperly approved of. Focusing on that dossier, you know, Republicans love to remind us often that the Democrats paid for the dossier. They don't like to remind us that Republicans were also instrumental in the initial commissioning of this dossier.
Bullshit.
But did the release of this heavily redacted document, did it do what the president is claiming that it did?
So it didn't. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican, yesterday said that it shows no wrongdoing on the part of the Justice Department.
The Justice Department has concluded there was insufficient evidence to establish probable cause that former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power.
Also, this is a FISA application that's approved by 4 judges, each one over 90 days, which also means that they probably saw that the wiretap was picking up valuable information in order to renew it.
Now we know the truth. As Charlie Savage wrote in the New York Times, in respect after respect, the newly disclosed documents corroborated rebuttals by Democrats on the panel who had seen the top secret materials and accused Republicans of mischaracterizing them to protect the president. National security experts say the documents showed the FBI had probable cause.
National security experts say the documents showed the FBI had probable cause.
The Justice Department has concluded there was insufficient evidence to establish probable cause that.
This is so ridiculous. It's just beyond words. You know, it's you're talking about misleading the courts. It's just so misleading going through those 400+ page documents. You know, where do you even begin? It's literally a complete joke.
I'm not sure where to start. Maybe we start with this, that the chair of your committee, Devin Nunes, despite the fact that I think independent folks who have read through this, who have followed this story, say this sort of knocks down a lot of his theories, he released this statement: the newly released documents confirm the Intelligence Committee's longstanding argument that unverified information from the Steele dossier formed an essential part of all the FISA applications on Carter Page. It proves the FBI used outright political propaganda to spy on American citizens during the election. What do you say to that?
They claim that there was no disclosure to the court, when in fact now you can read the application and you can see they did disclose this bias. So in point after point, basically the Nunes memo has been discredited.
Bullshit.
But that doesn't stop either Nunes or the president from saying otherwise.
Well, I want to just hammer home that point because it's been such a key part of this sort of counter-narrative that's been spun. The idea is that this sort of deep state conspiracy gets the dossier, goes to the court, and doesn't tell them the origin at all. It's a hustle. It's a con. They have this political oppo document. They go to the judge and they say, whoa, we just found this. You should really surveil this guy. Here is what the FISA shows from Charlie Savage's New York Times piece. The application contains a page-length explanation that does alert the court that the person who commissioned Mr. Steele's research was, and I quote here, likely looking for information to discredit Mr. Trump's campaign.
The Justice Department has concluded there was insufficient evidence to establish probable cause that.
That was like the whole thing. That was hours of television programming.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Bullshit.
We know they had multiple warnings long before the first warrant was signed. Don't trust this dirty dossier. It's unverified. Steele has an agenda. Clinton paid for it, and they did it anyway. And they lied to the court in the first one.
CBS News Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues spoke with former Secretary of Defense and CIA Director Leon Panetta about the release of this controversial memo.
I believe it creates a constitutional crisis when the president distrusts the Justice Department and the FBI. They are our primary law enforcement institutions in this country. They're the primary law enforcement agencies under our Constitution. And when the president distrusts the FBI and the Justice Department, as he did in this matter, I think it does create a crisis in our system of government.
Well, this is an admission by our government that these were illegal warrants to spy. And you're talking to the people who signed them are James Comey, Dana Buente, who was then acting attorney general, now unbelievably FBI general counsel. And of course, the two people who proved the Peter principle, Rod Rosenstein and Andrew McCabe. They deceived the court, not just 17 major deceptions and omissions and errors, 51 of them all against Donald Trump. And these illegal warrants were a major component of the entire Trump-Russia investigation that put the nation through 3 agonizing years over what? Over a hoax based on a phony dossier and fabricated evidence. So Carter Page, he has a slam dunk case now for millions of dollars, and unfortunately, American taxpayers will have to foot the bill for that.
What?